Tonight I'm going to restore this little knife here, utility knife. It's pretty small. Not too much to do. The knife is very thin, so I'm not going to mess with the existing profile. It's pretty dull. Could probably still cut if I forced it to cut something. It does have some rust. That's no problem. The handle's in pretty good shape. The pins are in pretty good shape. All right, here we go.
So I've got my mask on now, so I'll sound a bit funny. I just wanted to give a couple more thoughts of this blade. It's sort of an Asian style utility knife, maybe 5 inches, 6 inches long. This is a hollow grind, which is not terrible for a knife this thin for use in the kitchen. I usually prefer a flat grind. But I'm not going to mess with that today. I'm just going to sharpen up down here. So my first belt that I'm going to start with, I believe this is 400, somewhere around there. It's a little worn, so I can't even see the grit. I usually like to start around there just to see what kind of scratch pattern pops up, if any, just kind of gauging the toughness of the steel. It's not very flexible, so it's pretty hard steel. So let's see how this belt does with it.
Normally, at this stage, I would take it over to that polishing station over there, but I have a feeling that I don't need to, that it's pretty wicked sharp already. Yeah, that's more than adequate now, just to clean up. In fact, that's a very excellent edge. So I guess let's take you over to the cleanup station. I have a pretty bad cold. Nothing glamorous about this place. Well, the video cut out, so I'm not sure where I left off, but anyhow, the knife is in great shape edgewise. Didn't take too much off at the apex, so I'm quite pleased. The blade being so thin, there's always that risk that no matter how high of a belt you start at, especially with machines, you're going to pull off too much material. So looking at it after I was done, I can see that the edge was ground poorly because it's uneven. On this side, it kind of trails off a little bit further down. I mean, these kinds of knives, they're fantastic, but they're like $3, you know. Asian supermarkets usually have these. Some of them are better than others. This one's pretty stiff, so probably, you know, maybe $5 knife. Great little knife for the kitchen. I love these little things. So let me show you what I use to clean up. It's this stuff. It's a Gojo orange pumice. And sometimes when you have just little rust spots and maybe the blade's old and maybe kind of oily, you don't know what some of this stuff is, the pumice in this soap will pull that stuff right off. But let's see. I have some other chemicals and soaps to deal with rust if it's bad enough. I have these little stick-on lights that help me in the sink here. All right. Now, I would recommend you play on the side of caution when doing this kind of stuff. I've done this enough where I normally don't cut myself, knock on wood. However, there's still that risk, and especially when you get a knife this sharp, when you're cleaning it off with your fingers here, you just make one little wrong move, and boom, take off a sizable chunk of your finger. It's important to rub this stuff in. If you're concerned, you can always, you know, use a sponge. That works too. Sometimes I just use like a toothbrush. Looks like most of the rust has come off. No problem. Some of it's a little stubborn, so I have another tool for that. It's not too bad. So back on the sanders, I have dust ports on each one. You don't want to be inhaling metal dust. I have a buddy who is a respiratory therapist, young guy, military, ex-military I should say. He says there's no point in being macho about your safety and your health. You'll only feel young and immortal for a certain amount of time. Then you develop chronic lung disease and no one's laughing. So I take it pretty serious. I've got kids, got to think about them and want them to have a dad at the end of the day. And hopefully I can see when they have kids. Hope they have kids. Someone took my towel out of here, so I've been using paper towels. I gotta get a shop towel to put back up on the rack there. Okay, so got most of the oxidation out. Probably I could hit it up with another round of soap and just scrub it a little harder, get the rest of those little spots out. Not that it's entirely necessary, but another thing you can use, it's probably overkill for this, but I might as well just show you what I use with a really rusty blade. You can either use some Flitz, I think it's Flitz, yeah, Flitz polish. You rub this in. I usually use a toothbrush or something. If you've got like brass pins, you can use Brasso, and sometimes that's strong enough just to get little rust spots out of the steel. It works on steel and brass as well. You kind of have to scrub a little harder on steel, especially stainless. Much stronger still is this stuff. Rust dissolver, navel jelly, Loctite. It's just some sort of strong acid, eats away at oxidation and sort of the top layer. Sometimes it can leave a pretty nice magnetite patina on a high carbon blade too, sort of a little cheat. This one is some sort of stainless, so it won't really do that. I'll show you. Just dip a toothbrush in there. You know, that's way too much. You won't need a whole lot. You just brush it in. You're supposed to wear gloves, but you know, I'm not touching it, just using a toothbrush. Another thing I found with this, and I'll put on gloves for that, is that if the wood is pretty old, you can rub this on the wood too, and it kind of bleaches it a bit, makes it a little nicer. Then after you wash it off, you can put the oil back in. It makes it look pretty nice. It's another little trick. I'll do that. This has to sit for a bit. You don't want it to get wet, ideally. Oh, and it fell right into the sink. There we are. Who cares? You don't want to get this stuff on your clothes or your skin, because it'll bleach it, burn you. If you wash it off pretty quick, it's not too bad. It's not really extremely strong, but you know, if you get it on you and you forget about it, you might develop a little redness, soreness, etc. Yeah, it's already bleaching that handle pretty nice. Didn't really need it. I just wanted to show. You can already see different colors of the wood popping out. I found this works much faster and better on a carbon steel. On the stainless, I don't know why, doesn't like to work as well, so you kind of have to do a bit more scrubbing. Get that stuff out. Probably has something to do with the chemical composition, like too much chromium or something. Nice thing about a very thin blade with a hollow grind like this, the edge gets really, really sharp, razor sharp. In fact, razors are basically like what this is, but even thinner, and they have this kind of edge on it. It's where they get that name, razor's edge. Some razors don't, old straight razors. It's very common to have this kind of grind on them. So yeah, I mean, this is probably taking too much time for such a cheap blade, but I kind of like it, so I might keep it. You can also get oxidation out using abrasion, a belt, sander, hand sanding, something, buffing tools, any of the above. I find that this process with the chemical and the soap also makes the blade a little bit more attractive. And I think I got most of it. How about we let it sit for a few minutes, then come back to it and check it out after that. Don't want to touch the phone with this stuff on my gloves. All right, so it's been a few minutes. Did a bit more scrubbing. Now I'm going to wash it off with the soap again. So now you can see all the oxidation is off. The blade's quite a bit shinier. In fact, it's practically mirror polished up at the top there. The handle, I'm going to let dry real well. Might use a little fan. Then I'm going to rub it with some board oil just to protect the wood grain from moisture penetration. And it doesn't hurt to rub the blade as well. It's more important with carbon steel, but stainless does okay with that too. So I'll bring it back to you when the handle's dry. I'll apply the board cream. All right, so that handle's pretty dry. I have this little rechargeable fan here. I'll use this to dry the handles if they're too moist after washing. You can also just like wait overnight. Depends on how much time you've got. So this is the stuff that I use. It's beeswax and mineral oil. It's very good stuff. I used to make something like this myself. You know, just get a block of beeswax and mix it with oil. It's not very difficult. It's just convenient. Before I forget, I'm going to get a paper towel. That's way too much. Let's put some on the knife I restored yesterday as well. So really, after restoration, especially if you use something strong like navel jelly to bleach the wood a bit to get the old oils and anything questionable out of the grain, you really want to make sure to rub this in to the grain of the wood. So that'll help it to repel moisture in the future, be more resistant to moisture penetration. When oiling your blades, watch your fingers. Don't want them to start looking like this guy here. All right. Here's the one I restored yesterday. Just rub that extra oil into the handle. Love this thing. All right. Once you've rubbed that into the handle, it's pretty much set. All you gotta do, wipe off any excess with a paper towel. That's it. That blade's fully restored. I'm going to test it on some fruits and veggies here. No idea where it's from, at least branding. It says stainless Taiwan, so I assume that means that it's stainless steel and it's from Taiwan. Well, good old tomato test. Let's see. Wish my kitchen had better light. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. So. Tomato wants to sneak around. I'm not a magician or anything, just a normal stay-home dad. And normally I wouldn't cut anything this thin. There's no practical purpose to it. It's just a show, you know, it's fun. Knife is very, very sharp. It's a bit small. Normally I'm doing my work with something like this size. So working with something this small is a little difficult for me. This guy's still holding its edge pretty well. Could use a bit of a touch-up. I like these big knives for the scoop. These little knives are better for just doing detail work or if you don't have much else at hand. But very nice. Let's see how it does with something more stiff. Yeah, peels just fine. Obviously I prefer to use a dedicated peeler, but this works. I really should put a shop light above this board. I am quite out of practice hand peeling freehand, at least on a carrot. I just use one of those little IKEA things, you know, run it back and forth. Works very fast. So yeah, my cutting skills aren't the best, but very, very quick. Felt like the carrot was almost not there. Normally, with this kind of grind, if you have a thicker spine, what you get is wedging, where the food, especially more fibrous foods like this carrot or this jicama, it will actually increase the force that you need to break through the product, and actually it'll tend to split the food. When you're cooking, you might not want that. What that does is increases the surface area of the food, which changes the end dish. It's not that important for a lot of styles of cooking. I tend to do a lot of Asian style of cooking, where you're doing these sort of long cuts, and you kind of want more very clean cut here for the way that you fry it and cook it. You don't really want it to, you know, smash, like say with my cleaver here. It's a very, very sharp blade. I haven't touched it up in a long time, but you can see it's maybe 4 or 5 millimeters thick. Despite it having a very sharp edge, you know, doing those kind of fine cuts, you can't really do it. So you get the same sort of thing going on. Depends on how the blade is ground here, what the end cut will be. It also depends quite a bit on how thick it is, the spine. As you can see, there's quite a big difference between these two blades. This one's like a hair, like the thickness of a hair. It's really thin. This one's meant for breaking bones or chopping wood. So when a blade's this thin, it doesn't matter too much what the grind is, because it's so thin, there's going to be virtually no resistance going through your food, no matter what it is. Pretty much the main thing is how sharp the blade is and what kind of micro bevel you put on it. So I put on here convex micro bevel, probably about 12 to 15 degrees, somewhere around there. That's typically what I do. It's a very sturdy edge. The convex puts a bit more meat behind the edge, so it performs like a thicker edge. So 12 to 15 would be somewhere around 20 to 25 in terms of strength, but you still get the sharpness of that tighter edge angle. And that's what I like, especially for the kitchen, you know, because especially with Asian cooking, you're not going to just plop this carrot in to a roast pan and then have your guests cut it at the table. A lot of Asian style cooking, you do most of the work at the board before you start your cooking. It's a good carrot. Now, especially when you get into something quite a bit more fibrous and bulky like this, the geometry of the blade makes a big difference. And so this one's quite thin. Let's see how it does. Oof. I feel like I need more power behind my blade. So something like this, you know, you can use it, But for me, especially with a big veggie like this, I don't really want to go at it with a small blade. I don't want to go at it with a meat cleaver either. I mean, oh, hey, kind of works. Yeah, it's my chef's knife, 9-inch, nice taper, full flat grind, very tall, so I get lots of scoop. Very ergonomic, balance points right about where I like to pinch. Actually, it's a little bit further back here, but this feels good to me. Yeah, this is way more comfortable for these kinds of tasks. I love jicama. So let's see how it does not peeling a big thing. Still not very good leverage for something much bigger than it. Still very sharp, just not very comfortable to do a bigger thing like this. This is much better. Oh. So let's make little strips, little snack strips. See, that's okay. You know, these are good. Kids tend to like them. I love this stuff. Still much quicker. Well, that's about it. I mean, this has gone on long enough. As you can see, I mean, every blade kind of has its purpose. This is really good for when you want to do fine detail work, like getting that out of the tomato. It's very nimble. Very good. I'll say if I wanted to peel the tomato by hand, you know, this is much more comfy to do this kind of task. As opposed to this guy, you know, you can do all the same stuff. Out of my camera there. It's just not as easy to do. You know, you got this big old blade. You know, I can still peel. I can peel a carrot. You know, it's just much more comfy to do that kind of fine detail work with this. Yeah, there it is. Kind of dirty now, but that's the knife I restored. Quick and easy for something this small. It was in pretty good shape too. Hopefully the next video I'll do like a carbon knife that's in pretty bad shape. All right, bye everyone.